Olivia Liao, Senior Director of Data Science at Stitch Fix, formerly at Uber. Welcome to the Data Exchange Podcast.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So I am on a page on Stitch Fix where you folks describe the different uses of data science at Stitch Fix. So I guess let's first, Olivia, start out. So for the people who don't know, the way Stitch Fix works when you first sign up is when you fill out an extensive questionnaire. So it's a fashion site. So you fill out an extensive questionnaire, and based on that questionnaire, then they start sending you recommendations, but they're not actual recommendations in the traditional sense of Netflix. They'll send you clothes. Right?
Yes. Yeah. And actually, we started to do a little bit of both.
Okay. Yeah. So then, so first question is, that first shipment, how do you? I mean, there's not much data to go on at that point, right? So it's a bit of a cold start problem. So is this one of the most challenging things that you folks have to address at Stitch Fix? It's that first shipment.
Yeah, the first shipment, the cold start problems is like you mentioned, definitely one of the most challenging problems that they're working on. And so to your point, like we already like ask our customers while they're onboarding setup account, like a pretty extensive list of questions about their size, their fit, and their style preference. And we understand like, hey, like even that may not be enough. Like we may want to know even more about sort of like the nuances in their style preferences. And so there are other couple ways that we can use to sort of like gather more input from our customers to make that first Fix experience like much better. So for instance, like we actually have this interactive features called Style Shuffle. Think about it as like Tinder for clothes or Tinder for style. It's actually a very interactive and fun game people can play, and like we have to gather quite a lot of data from that on top of the explicit questionnaires that we use. And customers can also write in sort of like a little notes to our stylists about like what they're particularly looking for in that fix. And so all these data like help us like better tailor that first experience, make that as as best and personalized experience for them in their first experience with us.
Of course, if this is a purely digital site, you have unlimited supply, right? So Netflix, Apple Music, and things like that. But you folks live in the physical world, so there's supply chain, there's shipping, there's logistics, and nowadays, especially, there's all sorts of supply chain problems. So there's a lot of things to balance, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
I would say.
So then,
go ahead.
Just making sure I'm happy really depends on what you have and what you can give to me in a timely manner, right? So.
Yeah, so that's why I think that data science is such a core piece of Stitch Fix business model, because we're not only working on like this styling recommendation, personalization. Our data science also touches things more on like the logistics side, right? Like inventory forecasting, warehouse assignment, all the way to like we want to open up a new warehouse. Where should it be located? And like there's a lot of optimization and data that we leverage to figure out like, yes, to your point, like, yes, we are constrained by our inventory, but even given that constraint, how do we still provide the best experience to our customers as possible?
And so you're also inherently a product company. So you're going to constantly improve, fine tune, change the offerings and things like that. So I assume you also run experiments, small scale experiments before you roll. So there's also the experimentation side. And by the way, Olivia, I've been thinking about this a lot more data scientists live in multiple worlds in some ways. So there's the world of reporting where they have to answer questions and do analysis, maybe ad hoc, even build an ad hoc model. And then there's the ongoing, supplying the production models and things like that. But then there's also the R&D in introducing new products, right?
Mhm.
So at Stitch Fix, as a data scientist, I assume I have to do all of those, right?
Yeah, that's an area. I think that's what really draw the data scientists to work at Stitch Fix is you get to that like 360-degree view of pretty much like every aspect of your job and the data scientist application, right? You're not just like building data on the back end. A lot of our data scientists also get to work closely with our business partners in styling, in marketing, or sometimes even executives. So they really play like this pretty important like strategic leadership role in our business.
So this is a bit of a tough question. I'll put you on the spot, and I'm sure you'll say they're all hard. But so, what are some of the hardest models at Stitch Fix? Recommendation, logistics. So, what are some of the most challenging models that you folks have to constantly stay on top of?
That's a great question. Yeah, I have to pick one. It's hard to. It sort of depends on. It actually depends on the different times. Different questions are pretty difficult.
Yeah. I mean,
so,
I assume like over Christmas, it's a different answer as opposed to now.
Yeah. Like recommendations is pretty difficult when we just buy a new batch of inventory that we have never sold before, right? Like we have co-star problem not just on customer but also on the closing items we have, right?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, if we never sell them, how are we supposed to know like if they're gonna perform well or not? But there are other times like when COVID first hit, right? Like the logistics, the demand forecasting, the inventory, the product routing, those becomes the most challenging problem for us to make sure that we are able to providing our customers smooth manner, they're getting their shipment on time, stuff like that.
You cut out there for a second. Anyway, so there's machine learning, there's optimization. I mean, obviously there's overlap, right? So, but most people think of data scientists doing machine learning, but at a place like Stitch Fix, I'm assuming there's all sorts of statistical modeling as well, optimization, running experiments, right? Yeah. And from what I understand, you folks also have a setup in place so that data scientists can be a little more self-sufficient, right? In other words,
yes,
they can write their own pipelines. I'm not sure if they actually take their models all the way to production. Maybe that's a different team. But the idea that at least Eric Colson always told me is they wanted the data scientists to be self-sufficient.
Yeah, I think that's a value that we really hold true to our heart is how do we enable our data scientists to function autonomously, and that means that not only do we provide them the necessary tools or platforms, but also provide them the business context, right? So that's a big chunk of my job is to provide that right context and motivation to my team. And we do, to your point early on, we do have a pretty big data platform team that works really closely with our data scientists to help them adopt like internal tools or external tools like Datadog or Lookers for to govern the model development, and also to integrate the algorithm with our engineering system. So our data science can be able to deploy models into the production by themselves. So I like to think about like our platform engineers sort of like design and route the wiring, while our data scientists decide, okay, what is the best algorithm to plug into the outlets?
So I forgot this key subtle point with Stitch Fix, which I don't know if this is still the case, Olivia. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the algorithms are really supposed to be helping humans, right?
Yes.
So they're not fully autonomous algorithms. So can you explain exactly the role of algorithms in the Stitch Fix customer experience workflow?
Yeah. So Stitch Fix, we are like a personalized styling service company, right? And our sort of like unique recommendation systems is actually built by powered by both our algorithms and also our human expert stylists. And I would say these two like work together in sync. They sort of each have their own strength and are doing what they're best at. And so the idea is together we are able to create this, 1 + 1 greater than 2 type of effect. So our algorithm, our machine are very good at doing routine calculations and filtering through lots of data. Right. So for instance, in the initial sort of like the style profile, our clients tell us their size. But we all know that like size small in this brand could mean very different things than size small in the other brand. Right. So over time, like our algorithm will be able to collect those data and what other clients are saying about the experience with those products to figure out like, okay, what band what's actually the size that will fit you the best, even before you know it. And then after our algorithm make those kind of recommendation, from a customer perspective experience, like you interact with our stylist then come in and then actually handpick those items because they're really good at things that need context. Right. So for instance, maybe you say like, hey, I need to wear something to my ex-girlfriend's wedding. Wow, that's a very tricky question. So that's where our stylist actually comes in and like figuring out maybe our client is willing to stretch out of their comfort zone a little bit and actually build that like very enduring and long-term relationship with our customers. Right, because that kind of like human interaction is still something people really looking for, especially nowadays, sort of post-pandemic. Having that trust and relationship between our customers, our stylists, is one thing that is very special for Stitch Fix.
So again, without revealing your secret sauce too much, so at a basically very broad level, so what are some key signals for some of these models?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are just so many of them. So there's the onboarding profiles we talked about, and like I mentioned, we also we have like interactive features, right? Like this style shuffle I talked about, where we basically collect data from every moment of engagement that we have with our clients. We gather data from their behaviors on the website, what they click on, what they click on, what do they say in terms of like leaving feedbacks. We actually have a lot of customers leaving feedbacks about their purchase experience or about the products we use. We also actually gather data from our the vendors as well, so about the inventory. And so we're able to like holistically like look across all these data to provide our final recommendation.
Do you I don't know if this is possible, if you guys are working on this, but do you anticipate the customers will be able to send you like even images? In Google image search, there's the reverse image search, right? So here's an image, find me similar images.
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually that's a very promising area. So we know that like, yes, deep down in our recommendation system is all about metrics calculations and numbers, but language and images are still the best at communicating the nuances in style preference of our customers. So our customer do send us, for instance, links to their Pinterest board.
I see.
Right, or pictures of themselves.
So you have a way. You have a way of taking advantage of that at this point, ingesting the images in the Pinterest board?
We're working on that. We're also building like some of our internal features for our customer to be able to share images with our stylists, so even with each other.
Right. So you talk about language. So what's the role of language here? Because this is a very visual. I guess you can describe what you want, but in many ways, if I show you what I want, what's the expression? A picture paints 1,000 words, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, picture speaks 1,000 words.
So what's the role of language in what you folks do?
Yeah, I think about language so like as this like communication between our customers and stylists that sort of like also complements what images can tell us, right? So you can look at
So this is
a
not a
blouse.
this is not a chat bot. They're actually interacting with a stylist.
Yeah, they're writing notes about what they're looking for, and our stylists also write sort of like styling recommendation, tips on how our customer can dress back to back to them. As I would say, like for instance, like we get product specs of say a blouse, right? Like the sleeves is such an inches long, but again, that means very different things to you or to me because no two bodies are the same, right? So like the language plays an important role here because it can really tells me like, okay, so for my body type, the sleeve's gonna cut around the elbow and drapes a little bit. And that like really, that is more like how a lot of our customers like really like absorb information.
So what are some major initiatives around language? Because as many of our listeners know, we're in a golden era for language in some ways with these large language models, the model hubs where you have access to so many embeddings now that you can use off the shelf. But as many people know, they don't quite work off the shelf. You'll still have to tune it for your domain because they tend to be trained on very general data, right? So what's the role of language? What are some major language initiatives inside Stitch Fix?
Yeah, that's I like that question because yeah, like you said, it's a golden era, and we do have several sort of like natural language processing applications here at Stitch Fix. So from the starter, like as you can probably imagine, like I mentioned, we gathered millions of feedbacks and even request notes from our customers, and so we harvest those data we gather from our clients in order to abstract like very valuable insights from this kind of unstructured data, right? And then we can then use them as an input to our recommendation system to make them more accurate. And we can also arm our stylists with this like very rich but digestible information so they can do their jobs, right? Rather than reading through like lots of like feedback and request notes, like we can provide them a summary of what we understand about these customers. And if you go one step deeper, you can imagine that like we have this text-based information I just talked about. If you can combine them with the customer's purchase history or their style preference, we can effectively map words, especially style-based words, into our latest style space, just like we do for clothing items. And then if we then use GPT-3, we can then generate aspiring headlines for our ads. We can generate factual descriptions of an image for our visual impaired customers. Or like the example I gave earlier, we can translate numeric specs of products into a format that people are used to absorb information.
So I spent a few years in a hedge fund, so that was tough forecasting, building models in financial markets because they're very efficient. But before this, before we started this podcast, I started thinking, well, fashion is getting tougher too because with the rise of the so-called fast fashion outfits, I imagine it's very hard for it can be quite challenging to anticipate some of these really new fashion trends, right?
Yeah. It's that's why like all these feedback data that we gather for our customers it's very important because like through detecting those data, like we're able to figure out like what are some emerging trends. right? Like especially like when COVID first hit, that's sort of like how we quickly like figure out like, okay, what are the changing needs of our customers, and so we can pivot as very quickly.
So do you guys use external data? Like, is there a subreddit for that you can mine for emerging fashion trends or whatever? So are you completely just using your own data, or do you isn't that one of the jobs of the data scientist is to find external data?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we do leverage external data as well. Like I mentioned, we have data from our vendors. We obviously also are looking for things like what people are searching for on Google, on the internet about stylings, about fashion, right? And like we try to combine those external signals with the internal data we have, yeah, to best figure out like, okay, what's the trend heading towards.
So do you think there will be a day where people will just the main UI for fashion becomes kind of like the feed on TikTok, you know, like you just have a stream and then you just basically you tell Stitch Fix that, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
an
yeah.
an
Like
ending stream of choices, right? So
yeah, the style shuffle I mentioned to you earlier are pretty close to that. And we are also pretty aspired to make Stitch Fix not just a transactional experience to our customer, right? It's not just like a place you come only when you buy clothes, right? Like we wanted to make a more engaging experience where customers can come here, just look for fashion tips, or just to browse, aspiring like fashion images, or they may even come here for like to initiate a live interactions with our stylist.
so it seems to me that Stitch Fix is like ground zero for multimodal models, right? Because you've got it's inherently visual, and
Mhm.
then you like as you pointed out, there's language signal from language, there's signal from structured data transactions,
Mhm.
and I don't know if there's a the Stitch Fix have a graph. I mean, like are friends recommending things to each other on Stitch Fix? So there's
Mm.
multimodal data. So I assume you folks use multimodal models then, right? So
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have a few applications of multimodals here at Stitch Fix, because like you described, like uh, we take a pretty wide variety of different data and information about our customers in order to make that personalized recommendation, and those inputs sort of span across multiple modality, right? Like image, what they actually said, the style profile, their purchase history, their behaviors on the website, and so we do encode all this information into so like a single embedding, and we have found like that not only makes our modeling system more flexible to ingest any future, additional input data like imagery, for instance, but it does actually makes our model, our recommendation more accurate and more tailored to what our clients is asking for.
interesting. So responsible AI, big topic in the data science space. It's an umbrella term to collect a bunch of risks associated with AI, right? So fairness.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it doesn't apply to you folks. Safety, maybe reliability, interpretability, um, yeah, transparency. So, are there any specific things that you folks do around responsible AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's In my mind, it's certainly a pretty challenging topic. I don't think there's really a single silver bullet for it. There are a few angles that we approach this. So on
But
the sort of like,
has it become part of the workflow, right? So
yeah,
before we push something out to production, we got to go through some steps.
yeah, yeah. So one, on the ML ops side, right? Like I mentioned earlier, our data science works really closely with our platform engineers for model deployment governance. So an example, we recently had an internal working team, so like publishing guidance to help our team better managing like testing strategies or creating and documenting service level objectives before we deploy the model. Another actual responsibility of our model that is actually quite unique to Stitch Fix is we're also providing sufficient diversity in our personalization. So our customers are not seeing the same thing over and over again. And then at the same time, like I mentioned, we have a human expert stylist to ensure that we are serving customers of all taste well. So including those with very niche taste and needs. So if you combine those two together, they're able to generate data that prevents our model from over-indexing on sort of like this majorities.
Otherwise, we'll be all wearing the same clothes, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, so there's the model that you built for me as a user. But let's say I'm not a user. I'm actually a supplier of clothes to Stitch Fix. Are there models at that for people who actually are the suppliers?
Yeah. We have we build data tools and also provide some data insight to our vendor. Take initiatives we have recently called Elevate, where Stitch Fix mentor entrepreneurs of color to use our art and science approach and help fund their business. So in this case, we have never worked with we have never carried the product of these emerging designers in our ecosystem before. And so you may wonder, like, then how do you know if they're building the right products and they're going to sell well? And so one of our data scientists actually built this tool that takes an image of this emerging yet totally unknown style and combined with other additional data like pricing to predict how well those styles are going to perform with our clients. And then we make these data tools available for those emerging designers so they can adjust their product before they start selling on Stitch Fix system.
So inside Stitch Fix, what's the relationship between data scientists and data engineers? Do they work side by side, or what is the structure of a data team inside Stitch Fix?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we think about data science organization sort of has vertical functions and also sort of like horizontal teams. So data engineers being one of them, that they build and maintain data that not just supporting data scientist work, but also support the entire business, right? For our BI functions and for our executive reports. And at the same time, we have vertical data scientists that may focus on particular recommendation systems or particular marketing algorithms, and they would have the autonomy to build or leverage existing data to deliver the business problem they have at hand.
Do those vertical data scientists, do they rotate after a while? Because you get tired of building the same model again and again, right?
Yeah, that's certainly a flexibility that we offer to our data scientists, is that internal transfer mobility, right? Because we hire data scientists that are often like full stack, right? Like they can do a lot of different things, and so sometimes, maybe they solve marketing problems, but later on there's pretty urgent needs on operation side, and so like they may be able to plug a hole over there as well.
So data scientists are in demand. So why Stitch Fix? So this is your chance to make a pitch for why work as a data scientist at Stitch Fix when you want to work elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say because data science is a pretty core of sort of like Stitch Fix business model. I report to our C-suites. We do use our data science pretty pervasively throughout our business. And the way we set up our data scientists to work with our business partners is that autonomy and that view of what's going on with the business, so they can also have a say on the table about the strategy that the business should be taking. So I think really enjoyable components of our job is you're not just being assigned a task that you do at back end, right? Like you are being encouraged to step forward and working as equal partners with other functions on stylings or on marketing to figure out, to help them frame their problems. Like what is the right question we should be asking about our business? And then like help the business answering those questions correctly. And if needed, sometimes even push back when the wrong question is being asked.
No, it's unusual for data scientists to have that much visibility and impact, right? So, but so Olivia, let me ask you this. So for the data scientists who care about career development or the tools they get to use, so what kinds of tools and techniques will they learn or sharpen while they're Stitch Fix? Deep learning,
Yeah.
all these things, right? So
Yeah, a lot of things actually. Like I said, like we because we let our setup so our data scientists are like is pretty full stacks and work on a variety of different problems, and so that actually gives them the opportunity to learn different skills, different tools, different systems from
they can really improve their coding skills if that's what they want to do.
Yeah, coding skills. Some of them also becomes experts in influencing, right? Like that like convincing executives or explain a very complex data science concept
which sets
the
them up
leadership.
to become data science leaders down the road, right? So
Exactly.
yeah.
So you sort of have that freedom to pick an area where you really want to hone your skills, and whichever area you pick would probably have an opportunities for you and people who can help mentor you in that direction.
But the key question these days is, what about remote?
Yeah, remote. Yes, we have been working remotely for quite, right now it's more than a year, probably almost 2 years now, and so that's another I think pretty like an advantage of Stitch Fix is as a company, even though like our data science as an organization is just started this remote working mode, but we have a lot of experience as a company facilitating remote working for our stylists, for instance. And so there's a lot of like what works out well, what doesn't, and what are the right structure that we should put in place for remote working mode that can set everybody up for success.
But can a data scientist work fully remote?
We believe so.
Okay.
And that's what we aspire to do as well, is like I said, like setting up so that everybody can, every one of our data scientists in their role have the right tools, their knowledge to be able to do their job the best.
And with that, so I just want to kind of emphasize to our listeners. So at Stitch Fix, you can really develop your technical chops if that's what you want to do. But more importantly, a lot of your work really will drive the line of business, because basically, as Olivia has described, the company at its core, it's in the data science is in the DNA of the company. So if you want to work in a place where you're just not, as Olivia's mentioned, you're just not kind of going through the motions, you're really driving results, Stitch Fix is a great place to be, assuming they let you work remote.
we do offer remote opportunities for everyone. And to your point, that's what actually drew me to Stitch Fix a couple of years ago. When the opportunity knocked on the door, I was very excited to learn how a company like make data science such a core piece of its business.
And with that, thank you, Olivia.
Thank you, Ben.